My husband made me promise never to go to the family farm in Canada. The day he died, I discovered the farm was mine, and that the secrets hidden there would change my life forever. When I close my eyes, I still see the cold hospital hallway, the beeping of the monitors, the hurried footsteps of the nurses, the heavy silence that fell after the line on the screen became straight. Joshua, my husband of 24 years, was gone like a flame smothered by the wind. I, Catherine Mitchell, was left with the echo of the promise he'd wrung from me months before. Never go to Maple Creek, Kathy. It's not the place for you. At the funeral, the white flowers gave off a sweet, almost cloying scent. Jenna, our daughter, cried uncontrollably, and I tried to cling to her hand like a twig in a raging river. But it was as we left the church that life turned upside down. The lawyer, Mr. Douglas, approached me with a manila envelope and an antique key. Mrs. Mitchell, Joshua left very clear instructions. You must go to Alberta. Maple Creek Farm is yours now. My heart raced. Maple Creek. The forbidden name, laden with silences, with stories Joshua never wanted to share. I spent nights asking him about his childhood, but he always looked away, as if there were too many ghosts in that place. And now, the farm was my inheritance. 2 days later, I drove long, lonely roads into the Alberta countryside. The sky seemed endless, a vast blue dome embracing the landscape. When I reached the gate of Maple Creek Farm, my hands trembled. The wood was sturdy, the Mitchell crest still carved in the center. I pushed the gate open, and the creaks echoed as if awakening buried memories. What I found inside took my breath away. It wasn't an abandoned farm, as I'd expected. It was a sanctuary. The stable was immaculate, with majestic horses that whinnied at the sight of me. The main house had been lovingly restored. New curtains, polished wood furniture, photographs of us on the walls. And in the barn, an art studio awaited me, with my old canvases carefully framed, as if Joshua had prepared a secret exhibition just for me. But the biggest shock was in the office. On the desk was a laptop with a note. Press play, Kathy. I'll always be with you. My fingers hesitated before clicking. The screen lit up, and there he was. Joshua, pale, but smiling. If you're seeing this, it's because I'm no longer there. I had little time, Kathy. My heart wouldn't have taken it. I used my last years to rebuild this place for you. For us. Everything here is yours, and everything here will guide you. My legs felt weak. Tears fell, but with them came a sense of presence. Joshua had left me not only the farm, but an emotional map for grieving. The sun was already setting over the golden fields when I closed my laptop. I took a deep breath, and for the first time since his death, I felt he was still with me, hidden in every detail of that farm. Little did I know that beyond the memories, Maple Creek held enemies lurking. That first night in Maple Creek, the silence was almost deafening. There were no passing cars, no city sirens. Just the sound of the wind across the fields and the occasional creak of the wood in the newly restored house. I slept little. I woke every hour as if expecting to hear Joshua's footsteps climbing the stairs, but it was only the memory of him prowling the rooms. In the morning, with the golden light of dawn streaming through the windows, I began exploring every corner of the farm. I entered the barn and found not only the art studio, but also an easel with an unfinished canvas. It was my portrait. Joshua had begun painting my features with careful strokes, as if trying to capture me forever. I touched the canvas with my fingers and felt tears burn in my eyes. In the stable, Ellis, the farm manager, was waiting for me. A middle-aged man with thick hands and a firm gaze. He took off his hat when he saw me. Mrs. Mitchell, he asked me to take care of everything until you arrive. This land is yours now. His voice held a mixture of respect and loyalty that disarmed me. I didn't know any of that, Ellis, I replied, still stunned. He never told me. Ellis took a deep breath. Joshua wanted it to be a surprise, but also protection. He knew his brothers were around. Those words echoed within me. The Mitchell brothers. I knew them from family gatherings. Men with easy smiles but calculating eyes, always interested in money and business. I remembered the times they'd mocked Joshua for abandoning the farm in his youth. Maple Creek is dead land, they'd said. A worthless hole. I continued exploring the house. In the office, besides the laptop, there were locked drawers. I used the key from the envelope the lawyer gave me and found a folder marked simply War Room. Inside were detailed geological maps of the region, technical reports, and Joshua's handwritten notes. A chill ran down my spine. The maps indicated underground oil deposits exactly where the brothers had claimed there were none. I returned to my laptop and opened the next video. Joshua was sitting in the same office as me. "Kathy, if you've made it this far, it's because you're ready. The maps you found are the key. They'll try to take it from you, but everything is recorded. Everything is proven." He sighed deeply, his eyes welling up. "Trust Ellis. Trust yourself. And never forget, you are stronger than you believe." I closed the video with trembling hands. My husband had silently prepared not just an inheritance, but a battle. And now, it was my turn to decide whether to flee the confrontation or honor his legacy. I looked out the window. The wheat fields swayed like a golden ocean. The farm, which had once seemed like a hidden memory, was now a battlefield. 2 days after my arrival, the silence of Maple Creek was shattered by the roar of engines. 3 black pickup trucks entered the main gate without even asking permission. From inside the house, I watched through the window as the Mitchell brothers got out, accompanied by men in ties carrying leather briefcases. The dust kicked up by their tires still hung in the air when Cynthia, the wife of one of them, adjusted her fur coat and gave me a venomous smile. Ellis hurried through the kitchen door. "They shouldn't be here," he said quietly, his eyes hard. "But I told you they'd come quickly." I took a deep breath, trying to control the fear that threatened to engulf me. I opened the front door. The oldest, Robert, walked up to me with the same air of superiority I'd seen so often at family dinners. "Catherine," he said, without even extending his hand. "We're sorry about Joshua, of course, but we've come to settle some matters." Behind him, the lawyers were already opening documents. Robert continued, "The farm, as you may know, has been in the Mitchell family for generations. Joshua had no right to transfer it alone. And now, as blood brothers, we have legal priority." My blood boiled in my veins. I, who had always been seen as the calm teacher, almost shouted back. But I remembered Joshua's videos, his plea to keep my head up. "The will and the transfers are legal," he said firmly. "This property is in my name." The brothers looked at each other and smiled, like predators facing struggling prey. The youngest, Daniel, murmured, "Do you really believe you can keep this up, Catherine? You, alone?" The words cut me, but I didn't show it. I just squared my shoulders. "I'm not alone." At that moment, Ellis stepped forward, firm as a wall. Joshua trusted her, and what he left behind is non-negotiable. Robert leaned in, lowering his voice but letting the venom drip. "Think about your daughter, Catherine. Jenna deserves stability. Don't involve her in something you can't control." My heart sank. I knew they would use Jenna against me. My daughter, weakened by grief, was the link they would try to corrupt. When they finally left, leaving a stack of documents on the living room table, my hands were shaking. Ellis placed the war room folder in front of me. "They're bluffing," he said. "These maps are proof that the farm's true value lies here. That's what they want. But Joshua has already prepared you for this." I looked at the papers the lawyers had left, full of terms and veiled threats. I took a deep breath and said to myself, "They underestimate me. That's exactly what will save me." The battlefield was set. That night, after the brothers left, leaving dust and arrogance behind them, the house seemed to shrink into silence. I sat in the office, my hands resting on the leather folder they'd left on the desk. Cold words like adverse possession, blood right, and annulment leaped from the paper like knives. But next to the documents sat Joshua's laptop. My heart knew he'd left answers. I clicked on a new video file. The screen lit up the dark room, and there he was, Joshua, sitting in the same chair I was in. His face was thinner, his eyes were tired, but he had the same serene smile. Kathy. If they've already shown up, it's because they smell the oil. I knew it would be like this. My brothers never cared about this land until they discovered what was beneath it. He coughed, a dry cough that betrayed his illness. I didn't tell you about my heart. The doctor said I only had a few years, and I used every one of them to rebuild Maple Creek for you. My chest ached. Tears fell, but I couldn't stop. He continued, "You will find a folder called War Room. Inside are geological maps and contracts. These documents are their weapon. The richest deposits are in the areas they call useless. That's where they've never looked. And there's more." He held up another folder to the camera. "I've kept records of decades of their crimes. Tax evasion, fraudulent contracts, bribery. If they touch you, Catherine, expose everything." I paused the video, my breath catching. Joshua hadn't just anticipated their greed, he'd prepared a counterattack. I pressed play again. "I know you think you're not strong enough. You always said you preferred the classroom, the paintbrushes, the simple life. But Kathy, you have something they never will. Integrity. You don't have to win by force. You win by what's true. Ellis knows who to trust. And Jenna, our girl, will try to understand their side. They will seduce her with promises. But remember, you have the truth." When the video ended, I closed my eyes. It was as if he were there, across the table, preparing me like a general before war. Ellis entered slowly, carrying 2 cups of tea. "I thought you might need this," she said. Seeing my excitement, she asked, "He left another video, didn't he?" I nodded, wiping my face. "He knew everything, Ellis, even about the illness. And yet he spent the last few years preparing this place, for me." Ellis placed his hand on the folder. "Then let's honor what he started. They won't take this, Mrs. Mitchell, not while I draw breath." In that moment, I realized I wasn't alone. Joshua had left not only evidence and maps, but also living loyalty in people like Ellis, and dormant courage in me. The enemy was close, but I was beginning to feel that somehow Joshua was still guiding every step. The phone rang on a gray morning, fog covering the Maple Creek fields like a veil. It was Jenna. Her voice sounded hesitant, broken. "Mom, I had lunch with my uncles yesterday. They said you were confused, that Dad didn't want you to be alone with this responsibility." My heart sank. I'd expected this. Joshua's brothers wouldn't waste any time using my daughter against me. "And what else did they say, Jenna?" I asked, trying to remain calm. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "That the farm isn't sustainable, that you could lose everything in lawsuits, that it would be better to negotiate with them. They promised I'd get a share of the profits if I helped convince you." I closed my eyes, swallowing the pain. The girl I had raised with so much love was now the target of the lies Joshua had foreseen. I took a deep breath. "Daughter, listen to your mother. Your father knew exactly what he was doing. This land is not a burden. It is a gift. He left proof. He left everything organized. You need to trust me." On the other side, I heard her shaky breathing. "I don't know who to believe, Mom." When I hung up, my hands were shaking. I ran to the office and opened another video of Joshua. As if I'd anticipated the moment, he appeared on the screen with that serious yet tender look in his eyes. "Kathy, if the boys have already gone after Jenna, I need you to be strong. They'll try to turn her head with easy promises. Remind her of who she is. Remind her of what we both taught. The truth always wins, but sometimes it takes a while to be heard." Tears fell heavily. He knew. Joshua even knew the order of the blows to come. That night, when Jenna arrived unexpectedly at the farm, her eyes were filled with confusion. We sat together on the porch, the cold air cutting through our words. "Mom, why didn't Dad ever tell me about the farm?" she asked, her voice thick with hurt. "Why did I only find out now?" I held his hand tightly. "Because he wanted to protect you, and because he knew that if he spoke too soon, his brothers would do exactly what they're doing now. He didn't trust them, but he trusted us." She looked away, biting her lip. I saw the struggle inside her, the love for her father against the lies her uncles were telling her. Before he could respond, Ellis appeared on the porch with a folder in hand. "Catherine, maybe it's time to show her what's in the war room." I looked at Jenna. I saw the same flame in her eyes that I'd seen so often in Joshua, and I realized this wasn't just a battle for land or oil, it was for our daughter's soul. I led Jenna into the office. The air there had a different weight, as if each drawer held a story Joshua had left to be told in due time. I placed the war room on the table and pushed it towards her. "Daughter, your father didn't just leave memories, he left the truth, and the time has come for you to see it for yourself." Jenna opened the folder with hesitant hands. The first few pages were geological maps, covered in handwritten notes. She frowned. "What's this?" "Proof that the most valuable oil deposits are precisely in the areas your uncles said were worthless. What they call dead land is actually their gold mine." I flipped through the pages to the next reports. There were falsified contracts, statements from offshore accounts, records of bribes to local officials. Jenna clapped her hand over her mouth. That's a crime." "Exactly. Decades of corruption and fraud. Your father spent the last few years gathering evidence. He knew the brothers would try to steal this land, and he wanted to give us weapons to defend ourselves." Her eyes welled up. And I almost believed them. I touched her face with my palm. "They know your weaknesses, Jenna. They know you miss your father and want answers. But they only offer lies. The truth is here, in these papers." Without saying anything, I turned on my laptop and opened the next video. Joshua appeared on the screen, more dejected than in the previous ones, but still with that firm look in his eyes. "My girl," he said, looking straight into the camera. Jenna put her hand to her chest, choking with emotion. "If you're seeing this, it's because your uncles tried to manipulate you. I need you to trust your mother. Everything I did was for you two. This farm is our home, not their business." Jenna's tears flowed freely. She touched the screen as if she could reach her father. "I trusted them, Dad. But now I see." I closed the video and pulled Jenna into a hug. I felt her body shiver against mine, but I also sensed the decision forming within her. "Mom, I'll stay by your side." "They won't divide us." Ellis, who had been watching silently from the corner of the room, nodded. "Joshua would be proud of you both. But we need to prepare ourselves. Now that the brothers know they don't have you, they'll attack even harder." I looked at my daughter, at the open folder on the table, and at the still glowing laptop. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just Joshua's widow taking on a fight. We were an entire family, built on the truth, ready to confront their greed. The following week, the Mitchell brothers moved their first piece on the board. I received a thick summons, delivered by a court official who barely looked me in the eye. It was a lawsuit, challenging the validity of the farm's transfer and demanding its division among the legitimate heirs of the Mitchell line. The pages were filled with legalese and veiled accusations against me: undue influence, weakened widow, unfit to manage assets of strategic value. I felt fury ignite within me. They weren't just trying to take the farm. They dared to paint me as a weak woman, a voiceless shadow. But before fear could creep in, I heard Joshua's voice echoing in my mind. "You are stronger than you believe." That afternoon, I met with Ellis and a lawyer recommended by Robert Douglas, the same one who had handled the will. We spread out the documents. War room on the table. The lawyer leafed through the corruption evidence, eyes wide. "Catherine, this is dynamite. If we take it to court, we'll not only dismiss their lawsuit, but also open a criminal investigation." Jenna, sitting next to me, squared her shoulders. "Then let's get it all out in the open. They tried to use me. They tried to divide our family. They deserve no mercy." I looked at her, feeling a surge of pride. The girl who had previously cried in confusion now spoke with the firmness of someone who had discovered the truth. In the following days, the Mitchells launched their public offensive. Local newspapers began publishing stories insinuating that I was a provincial teacher who took advantage of her ailing husband. Photos of me at the funeral were plastered alongside cruel headlines. But I responded in kind. We held a simple press conference in Maple Creek on the porch of the house. There was no luxury, just me, Jenna, and Ellis in the background. I held the papers tightly in my hands and spoke on camera. My husband, Joshua Mitchell, has spent the last few years rebuilding this farm. What his brothers call a whim is actually proof of his love for me and our daughter. They want to tarnish his memory out of greed. But here are the documents he left behind. I held up the reports. Proof that this land is worth more than they've admitted, and proof that his dealings aren't as clean as they say. The flashbulbs went off. For the first time, I wasn't portrayed as the frail widow, but as the guardian of truth. That night, I watched the news report. The reporter said, Catherine Mitchell, once seen as a silent victim, now emerges as the centerpiece of a multi-million-dollar battle that could expose one of the region's biggest family scandals. I smiled at Jenna, who sat next to me on the couch. They don't know who they messed with, Mom, she said. And I realized Joshua was right. I was no longer the woman who arrived at Maple Creek lost in grief. I was learning to be a strategist, just as he had prepared me to be. The Calgary courthouse was packed that morning. Reporters filled the hallways, cameras flashed like lightning, and the murmur of onlookers echoed off the cold marble. I walked beside Jenna, head held high, as the Mitchell brothers entered, surrounded by expensive lawyers and arrogant looks. They still believed I was the shy teacher, the easily crushed widow. At the hearing, the judge called for silence. The brothers began their act, fiery speeches about lineage, about Mitchell family honor, painting me as an intruder. Robert even banged on the table saying, "This woman is unprepared to manage lands of such strategic value. She's taking advantage of my brother's illness." I swallowed the pain, took a deep breath, and waited my turn. When the judge gave me the go-ahead, I stood up with the leather briefcase in hand. My voice came out firm, clear, stronger than I'd expected. "Your Honor, the Mitchells speak of honor, but what they hide is greed. My husband spent his final years preparing evidence, knowing exactly what he would face. Today, I bring before your honor not only property documents, but evidence of decades of corruption." I opened the folder. The impact was immediate. Detailed geological maps, independent engineering reports, falsified contracts, bank statements from tax havens. I laid it all out on the judge's desk. The courtroom buzzed with excitement. Here are records of bribery of local officials, tax evasion, and fraudulent contracts signed by the Mitchell brothers themselves. I looked directly at them. The oil they so desire is in areas they have ignored for decades. And the truth they fear is here, recorded by Joshua Mitchell himself. The judge leafed through the documents with a grave look. Their lawyers stood, trying to protest, but the tide had already turned. Reporters scribbled frantically. Cameras turned on me. Jenna squeezed my hand, and I felt the warmth of it like a silent oath. Then the judge declared, "Based on the evidence presented, the Maple Creek farm property remains unquestionably in the possession of Catherine Mitchell. Furthermore, I am immediately forwarding these documents to the appropriate authorities for criminal investigation against Robert, Daniel, and Charles Mitchell." The silence that fell over the room was deafening. The brothers turned pale, unable to hide their panic. One of them let out a muffled curse. I remained motionless, just staring at them. There was no need to celebrate. Justice spoke for itself. As I left, reporters surrounded me. Someone asked, "Mrs. Mitchell, how did you manage to prepare for such a battle?" I took a deep breath and replied, "Because I wasn't alone. My husband left me the truth. And the truth, no matter how much you try to bury it, always finds a way to surface." The cameras captured my face. For the first time, not as a grieving widow, but as the woman who transformed inheritance into legacy, pain into strength, and silence into voice. After the court hearing, life in Maple Creek was never the same. Newspaper headlines swept the country. Widow defeats Mitchell brothers in million-dollar battle. Corruption scandal threatens local dynasty. People looked at me differently now, no longer as the shy teacher who had lost her husband, but as the guardian of an empire that had nearly been swallowed by greed. I returned to the farm with my head held high. The wooden gate opened before me like a portal to a new life. In the stable, the horses neighed, welcoming the return of routine. In the studio, my canvases awaited new colors, and in the wind-gilded field, I saw something no amount of wealth could buy: peace. Jenna walked beside me. She no longer had any doubts. "Dad would be proud of us," she said, looking toward the horizon. "You've made this all bigger than they could have imagined." I placed my hand on her shoulder. "No, daughter. Us we transform. This farm is our heritage, but also our future." That night, I opened Joshua's laptop for the last time. The final video awaited. He appeared smiling, more fragile than ever, but with the light in his eyes intact. "Kathy, if you've made it this far, you've won. I know it wasn't easy. I know you cried, you doubted, you wanted to give up. But now look around. This land is yours. This life is yours. And remember, your inheritance isn't the oil, the buildings, or the money. It's the love we planted and what you'll do with it from now on." The screen went black. I stood there, silent, feeling the tears well up. They weren't of sadness, but of gratitude. Joshua had left me not just instructions, but the courage to be more than I believed myself to be. The next day, I decided. Part of the oil revenue would be used to create a foundation in Joshua's name, dedicated to supporting education and art in rural communities. The farm would live on, not as a symbol of wealth, but as proof that dignity can flourish even amidst struggles and losses. As I walked across the deck, the cold Alberta wind ruffling my hair, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. For the first time, I didn't feel the weight of being a widow. I felt the strength of being an heir, not just to land, but to a legacy. And I promised softly, "Joshua, your love is not lost. It has become roots that now support the future." Winter arrived in Maple Creek, painting the fields white. The farm looked like a silent painting. Horses breathing smoke in the frigid air, bare trees against the gray sky, the house warmed by the log fire. I sat on the porch, wrapped in a woolen shawl, and let my eyes wander the horizon. This was where Joshua's story ended, and mine began again. I picked up the journal I'd been keeping since the funeral. I flipped through the pages. Pain, doubts, discoveries, courage. Each line was proof that I had endured grief, not as a victim, but as a guardian. I smiled as I wrote the last words. The silence Joshua left me wasn't empty. It was a space for me to learn to speak with my own voice. Jenna appeared behind me, carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He sat beside me, and we sat in silence, staring out at the snow-covered field. The wind blew like a whisper, and for a moment I could almost hear Joshua's voice mingling with the sounds of nature. "You did it, Kathy, and I'll always be here." I closed my eyes. There was no more fear, no more helplessness. The farm was my fortress, my altar, and my future. Then I raised the mug towards the horizon and said in a firm voice, "They tried to rip my life from my hands. But what Joshua left me wasn't just land or oil. It was a legacy of love, courage, and truth. And as long as I draw breath, Maple Creek will be the place where truth flourishes." The snow continued to fall, covering ancient footprints, erasing traces of pain. And there, beneath the white silence of winter, I felt certain that I wasn't just Joshua's widow. I was Catherine Mitchell, heir, guardian, and finally, master of my own destiny. If my journey in Maple Creek touched your heart, please leave a like so more people can hear this story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future stories, and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I want to feel how far the voice of courage and legacy can reach.